an African folktale of survival. In the heart of Nigeria, where the sun kissed the vast savanna and the air hummed with the melody of life, a dark story lingered. It was a tale whispered by elders, told in hushed tones to warn the young and curious. This was the story of the tragic flight, a plane crash that claimed the lives of 60 bright Nigerian students on their way home for vacation, leaving behind a single survivor, scarred in body and soul. It was a bright Friday morning when the 60 students, their faces glowing with excitement, boarded the small plane. They were returning from a school trip in the north and couldn't wait to reunite with their families in Lagos. Laughter and chatter filled the cabin as the plane taxied down the runway, their youthful energy infecting even the flight attendants. Among them was a quiet boy named Tunde, a reserved 14-year-old who sat by the window, gazing out at the world below. His mother had always said, "Tunde, your silence speaks louder than words." But that morning, his silence was filled with unease. He couldn't explain it, but his heart thudded with a rhythm he couldn't ignore. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, the students' laughter drowned out the low hum of the engines. Stories of their adventures were exchanged, and dreams of home-cooked meals filled the air. But as they soared above the clouds, a strange turbulence shook the plane. At first, it felt like a bump in the road, but then it grew violent. The laughter stopped. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some unexpected turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated." Panic began to creep into the students' eyes. The plane swayed like a leaf in a storm, and the once blue sky outside turned a menacing shade of gray. Lightning flashed, illuminating the fear etched on every face. Tunde gripped his armrest, his knuckles white. A deep voice whispered in his mind, "Stay calm, Tunde. Stay calm." He didn't know if it was his inner voice or something else, but it felt comforting, like the voice of his late grandmother, who used to tell him stories about the spirits of the sky. Suddenly, there was a deafening bang, and the plane lurched downward. Screams filled the cabin as oxygen masks dropped from above. The students clung to one another, tears streaming down their faces. The plane spiraled out of control, and in those final moments, Tunde closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. "God, if you can hear me, please protect us." When Tunde opened his eyes, he was surrounded by fire. The wreckage of the plane lay scattered across a dense forest, and the smell of smoke and burnt metal filled the air. His body ached, and his skin felt as though it were on fire. He tried to move, but found himself trapped beneath a piece of debris. All around him, there was silence, an eerie, deafening silence. The laughter and voices of his friends were gone. "Tunde," a voice called softly. It wasn't a human voice, but something ethereal, almost musical. "Get up, Tunde." With a surge of adrenaline, Tunde pushed against the debris and crawled out. The sight that met his eyes was one of pure horror. Bodies lay scattered like broken dolls, their faces frozen in terror. The forest, once alive with the chirping of birds, was now a graveyard. Tunde stumbled through the wreckage, calling out for help, but there was no response. He was the only one alive. His clothes were torn, and his skin was charred. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the gravity of the situation. But as he wandered, he began to hear whispers. At first, they were faint, like the rustling of leaves, but then they grew louder. "Why, Tunde? Why you?" the voices asked. Terrified, he looked around, but no one was there. The shadows of the trees seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that resembled his lost friends. Their faces appeared in the bark of the trees, their mouths moving silently. As night fell, Tunde found shelter under a large tree. The whispers continued, growing more insistent. "Come with us, Tunde. You don't belong here." He shut his eyes tightly, refusing to listen. He knew the stories his grandmother had told him, stories of the spirits of the lost who lingered in the world of the living, seeking company. "Leave me alone," he shouted into the darkness. But the spirits did not listen. They surrounded him, their forms flickering like flames. Among them, he saw his best friend, Chijioke, who had sat next to him on the plane. "Why didn't you save us, Tunde?" Chijioke's voice was hollow, filled with sorrow. Tunde broke down, sobbing, "I tried. I prayed. I didn't want this to happen." The spirits grew silent, and one by one they faded into the night. Only Chijioke remained. "You have been given a second chance, Tunde," he said. "Do not waste it. Tell our story. Let the world remember us." With those words, Chijioke disappeared, leaving Tunde alone in the darkness. Days passed before rescuers found Tunde. He was weak, dehydrated, and covered in burns, but he was alive. News of the crash spread like wildfire across Nigeria, and Tunde became known as the boy who survived. But Tunde was never the same. The spirits of his friends haunted his dreams, their whispers a constant reminder of the tragedy. He dedicated his life to honoring their memory, sharing their story with anyone who would listen. To this day, the forest where the plane crashed is said to be haunted. Locals claim to hear the laughter of children at night and see shadowy figures dancing among the trees. They call it the Forest of Lost Souls, and they say it serves as a reminder of the fragility of life. Tunde's scars never fully healed, but they became a symbol of his resilience. He carried the weight of the tragedy with him, ensuring that the 60 students who boarded that ill-fated flight would never be forgotten. And so, the story of the tragic flight lives on, a chilling African folktale passed down through generations, a tale of loss, survival, and the unbreakable bond between the living and the dead.